are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We are recording this after the conclusion of the Stanley Cup. I know we talked about it a little bit on our latest episode, but we are a couple days late recording at night. It's a little bit of a different vibe here at this week's show.
Well, we would have done the Sunday thing, but somebody, a couple teams had something to say about that, so we held off for the end of the Cup Final, and now that it's been awarded and all that, we can move forward with this.
And
Off-season's here.
And it was a phenomenal series, and we will talk about that towards the second half of the show here, but we have really big Flyers news, and honestly, if the news was any smaller, we probably would have started with the Cup. But this is really big news, and we have to talk about the fact that the Philadelphia Flyers have a new head coach, and it's meme-erific. John Tortorella comes to town.
Meme-erific. There's a word.
Man, listen. Him in the bubble a couple years ago with Columbus was an absolute goldmine. Telling what he thought about Artemi Panarin being in the restroom, Anthony Duclair's work ethic. We heard some real truth bombs out of Torts a couple years ago, and they talk about Philadelphia being a little bit of a microscope, and John Tortorella, man, it's going to be fun watching him interact with certain members of the media. Let's be honest.
Are you trying to, is that a thinly veiled shot to me?
Oh, no. Oh,
okay.
No, absolutely
no,
not you.
I'm just joking.
Yeah,
I don't know if you caught that. Crossing Broad ran an article that was after all the initial reporting stuff about Tortorella. Somebody else who's over there ran a thing. Okay, let's set the odds on who the first media member that gets blown up, by Torts.
Sam Carchidi.
I don't remember exactly what his odds were, but it was high on the list. I will tell you that. The funny part was that all the guys over at 97.3 tweeted out that I'm at plus 950 or something like that, I guess. And I wasn't really in the article, like I was rest of field, if you will.
Okay.
But they jokingly shared the article and then retweeted with me at we'll say me at plus 950. Which,
we'll give you a write-in spot.
We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, the press conference, the introductory press conference was done virtually. And, I didn't get a question in. I wanted to. I had hand raised like you typically do for those things. And I sat there for 50 minutes trying to get on there, but didn't work out. But
you know what I think might get you?
What's that?
You know what I think might get you? I think you're a bit of a baby face, and he's going to look at you and think you're a kid.
That depends. Are we? Am I talking to him without a mask on this time? Because, if we're in the room with the mask on, I don't think it matters as much.
Man, that's fair.
Look. I'm 30. I'll take babyface all day long. Don't get me wrong. But all right,
you know what I'm talking about. I think he's used to crotchety old reporters, and I think you might be a little young.
Can I counter them? Because I hope that the little shades of gray that are starting to show up, and the fact that sometimes, if I look close enough, I sit there and go, geez, whose hairstyle I have? Mike Sullivan's. And Mike Sullivan's like Torts' best friend. Okay. So maybe that'll rub him the right way or something. I don't know. I've noticed before. I'm like, oh my god! If all it needs to do is get grayer, and I'm gonna look like Mike Sullivan.
So back to Tortorella here. We've gone off the rails
already.
Less than 5 minutes into the show.
Hey, you asked. Okay,
You're right. You're right. John Tortorella.
Yes.
4-year deal.
Yep.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 to 18 million, according to Elliot Friedman on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast.
Closer to 16 probably, because they said approximately 4, but I'm sure there's change involved.
There's probably some bonuses in there.
I don't think it's not as high as, because I've seen some other coaches who have been hired lately who are approaching different organizations. I think, didn't Peter DeBoer with Dallas get like 4.5 mil a year or something like that?
Something like that, and I think it was over 5 years.
It's not that much though.
Right.
It's not Torts not that much, which is kind of a surprise when you think about it.
It's
Torts carries a lot of weight,
Yeah, it's a pretty reasonable deal, all things considered. Yeah. And but what does it mean for the Flyers, you think?
Oh wow, I've been asked that question a lot.
I know I'm just lobbing you a softball here.
No, it's a loaded question. That's the thing, because what does it mean? Well, if you listen to Torts' press conference to start everything off, then it means business, because of the fact that that's the way that Torts operates.
Sure.
You got the whole discussion about, about how this is like he already has camp plans, and he's, it's going to be a hard camp. They're going to do a lot of skating. It's going to be, learning how to play away from the puck is a big part of it. Structure is a word he used a lot.
But will they hit the beach?
or do something else on the beach?
Yes.
I got your point. Either way, let's not sugarcoat the deal with Tortorella here. Like, John Tortorella is a good coach.
Yeah.
He just is. You're not 14th all time in coaching wins. You're not second among American coaches by being bad. And you're a good coach. But
honestly,
the situation is the question, I think.
Well, right. And honestly, I think that is the problem, quite frankly. All the respect in the world to John Tortorella. I think he is incredibly entertaining. I think he is a very talented NHL head coach. And like I said, I believe that is the problem. Because so when Alain Vigneault got hired, we talked about how he's a piss and vinegar coach, and the first 18 months is when you're probably going to get your best results out of him. And he comes in and he fires the boys up and blah, 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 but it wears thin over time. Right. John Tortorella is the exact same way. He does it differently, obviously, and he's not really all that similar as a coach. But he has that similar quality with Alain Vigneault. And I'm sitting here looking at the current roster, and I'm looking at the next 18 months. And I see John Tortorella, quite frankly, being talented enough to drag this team to another mediocre finish, something we've seen over the last decade.
I want to pull up the active roster.
Ad nauseum. Right, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, because drafting between 14th and 18th doesn't do you a whole lot of good long term. And I know, you find players there, blah, 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 Joel Farabee, et cetera, but that's not the point. Is you're not getting the elite talent that you need to really compete and make a push. Right. We'll talk about the Stanley Cup later, and it was two just absolutely star-studded rosters all the way up and down the list. A large number of them picked in the top 10.
That's two absolute wagons of teams. Like, they're just loaded.
Right, and they're all chock full of top 5, top 10 picks.
Sure. Now, I mean, and I'll get into that more when we get to the Colorado side of it for sure, because I wrote about it, and there were a certain way that I wrote about it that was kind of describing maybe the way that it really needs to be done. Not in the sense that you need to, like, Colorado never blew it up. Let's make that clear. There were multiple times where they could have. They did not blow it up.
That's fair.
But there's a level of understanding that it is a journey and sticking with some stuff, and I'll definitely get into it more when we get to the Colorado side of things, but you're not wrong about Tortorella in this sense. Like, I'm looking at the roster right now, and I don't want to pull tons of names out of it, because some of them we know should be better than what they are. Like, we've seen better from a lot of the guys on that list than what they were last year or the year before. Right. Sure. But let's just hypothetically say, and I'm kind of randomly, it's like throwing darts at the wall names here, but take a guy like Patrick Brown, Noah Cates, Scott Lawton, and let's go to the defensive side and say, it's tough to say for the defensive side because they all could be better. I mean, there's been questions about how Risto will take.
Well, something you and I mentioned before the show is that Ivan Provorov should theoretically do fairly well.
And I agree. But Ivan Provorov's one of those picks that you're talking about.
Yes.
A top 10 pick that you need the most from. Right?
I agree.
Like, there's a big difference. And, again, like, his draft year, it's already screwy because you take the top 2 out of the picture. And I know that you can't, but the top 2 were better than everybody else by a long shot.
By a mile, yeah.
To the point where the guy who goes third in that draft, you're sitting there going, oh, yeah, he could have been number 1 any other year, but McDavid Eichel. So Ivan Provorov was probably a top 5 pick that year.
Probably.
And Travis Konechny was probably, instead of 24th, probably mid-teens maybe? Like, realistically?
Fair.
If you take those 2 out of the picture and then also factor in kind of what he's become with some of the numbers. I mean, there's guys who haven't played like that. There's a lot of shuffling you can do because Barzal's in that draft. Shabbat's in that draft. Kyle Connor's in that draft. Like,
I really do wonder that if we've seen Travis Konechny's last game as a Philadelphia Flyer.
Here's what I will tell you again, and I stick by this, and I've stuck by this the whole way anyway, but I really do now with Tortorella being hired. of the three names we've discussed the most, I can't see it being Travis Sanheim, and I can't see it being Ivan Provorov, because Provorov, they want, let's be real, they want Provorov next to Ellis at some point. Will it happen? I don't know, because we don't know much about Ryan Ellis at this point. That's just the way that it is. But they want Provorov next to Ellis to see if it elevates the game, and I think you got to see if Tortorella's system elevates Provorov's game.
Question for you.
Sure.
You're Chuck Fletcher.
Okay, here we go.
Arizona calls.
Uh-huh.
Number 5 plus Travis Konechny for 4. Jacob Chychrun.
If they're willing to actually accept that, I probably go running to the trade center and submit the trade call.
Okay.
But
I was just curious. I don't necessarily know if that's a deal that makes a whole lot of sense. I just kind of thought of it off the top of my head there. But
I'll tell you why I make that deal. Because I don't know anything about Ryan Ellis right now. I'm okay with, I think you have no choice but to be okay with Sanheim, Ristolainen in the middle as the middle pairing, because you're going to give that a shot. You're going to have to, right?
But aren't you happier? Well, okay. If you bring in Chychrun, that kind of gives you the flexibility to move Sanheim, which is something we've briefly discussed, right? Because I don't think you're moving Ristolainen, because I think that's a contract that Chuck Fletcher kind of has to see out a little bit here.
Yeah.
But I think Sanheim is supremely movable at this point.
I'll tell you what happens with that.
Okay.
That makes more sense. If you were to pull off something like that, if you get Chychrun in for Konechny and the 5th overall.
Or maybe that's just the base of the deal and there's other pieces.
Then to me, you're going, if you make that happen, you're going into next season. You still need to sign a more realistic 6th option to play with Cam York, because it's not going to be Nick Seeler. It can't be Nick Seeler.
No, it can't be Nick Seeler. And it can't be.
But I think you're going to start the year with Sanheim playing with Ristolainen and Provorov playing with Chychrun and see how much it works. And
if you think Zamula's ready to play 6?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Needs to get stronger.
Is there any other kind of dark horse category, like an Adam Ginning type guy, or anybody floating around who might make a run at that?
You got to do Keith Yandel again, but better.
Okay.
And I say that meaning, when Keith Yandel got signed, and especially for the first, 5 games where he looked really good, obviously.
Sure.
That was there it is, low risk, high reward. That's the deal you make, right? You got to think low risk, high reward here. And
sure.
And just be smarter about it. Don't pick the guy who's attached to an Iron Man streak that you feel chained to. Pick a guy who you know that if he can't play, he can't play, and you can try something else.
There's no way he would come here, but a Zach Bogosian type. I think he actually has one more year left in Tampa.
That's a good comparison.
But that's the kind of guy you're looking for, a guy who can play 12 minutes a night and be okay.
Yep.
But either way, John Tortorella.
But the reason I say you start with that is because since Sanheim's in the last year of his contract, it does make him expendable as the deadline approaches, if you are getting to the point where it's okay, this isn't working.
I agree.
This year didn't work either. Now you're back in the seller's chair again. And if you're back in the seller's chair again, Sanheim is a great piece to have at the deadline.
And if you do make it through the draft and free agency with JVR, by the way, he is also a reasonable piece at the deadline, because you can retain that half a contract, and JVR at 3.5 or 3.75 or whatever that number ends up being. That's worth something to a team.
And you try to get some picks back or a pick back or whatever.
Right. And if you go through a team like Detroit or Arizona who can retain some cap for a pick in their favor, you can get that number down to a very reasonable number for a guy who can play second power play unit on a playoff team, no doubt, as the net front guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
either way, John Tortorella is in, and one of the players that he will be commanding this season will be getting a little bit of a later start. So I did want to mention here that Joel Farabee had surgery. Will miss 3 to 4 months is the current estimate, but with this joke of a medical team, who knows? We'll see. Sorry. So, Joel Farabee will not be ready to start the season. Theoretically, if all goes according to plan, he won't miss a ton of time, to be honest. He should be back, Thanksgiving-ish at the latest?
It's tough to say because let's not sugarcoat the surgery. It's
Sure.
It's the Jack Eichel surgery.
Okay.
Now, Eichel had to wait a long time to get the procedure, then get moved where he really wanted, like somewhere he would actually play.
Right.
So that's why that saga was totally different. Farabee's not going anywhere. So,
well, and to be fair, Eichel did set precedent, and he went through it successfully and was playing in like 5 weeks or something insane.
Now, let's be clear about this. Because there was a lot of talk, and I included, and we got some clarification because there were reports about it, that this only crept up recently. Because obviously the natural thought is, here's an injury that's going to keep him out for 3 to 4 months. Why is this happening at the end of June, not at the beginning of May when your season ended? It didn't happen right away. It's probably something that they tried to let him rest through. If it was bothering him, he had the shoulder injury.
Sure. You don't want to rush to neck surgery, especially with younger players.
Well, and who's to say, like, because the surgery's already happened at this point, so he's done. It's who's to say that part of that wasn't some second opinions, like trying to get some clear knowledge on, is this the step, right? Like, before you have this surgery, you've got to be doing that, right? But
absolutely.
But this goes back to, and this is what I tweeted once the news came out, was this is why you can't hope on injuries. And I want to pump the brakes on that a little bit because to me, like, listen, Kevin Hayes came back from injury, like, multiple times, but really when he came back that final time for the last couple of months was as good as he looked all year.
Absolutely.
You saw, like, okay, he actually looks healthy now, and he looks like he can play. So you saw that he put up points in that little stretch of time. Now, so assume that nothing changes, and I don't envision that it will. Like, it seems like he's past that now, so he gets to do the normal offseason again and not have this hopefully come up. But, you're still hoping it doesn't resurface, but it's a lot more reasonable to say, hey, listen, we finally figured out the problem at the end of last season. He had the procedure because of the infection that they found, and now he gets to really rehab it the right way. He played when he came back. He looked good when he came back. It finally wasn't a problem. So, okay, you can be optimistic about Kevin Hayes. You can also be optimistic about Sean Couturier, who by the end of last season, after being out for the whole year or most of the year with the back surgery that he had, was skating already. So you can be optimistic about him too, because you're like, okay, he was already on the ice. He's already trying to work his way back. That doesn't change anything. So
he was close to coming back at the end of the season.
If
there was conversation about it.
Well, like here's what it is. I don't think he was ever close to coming back knowing where they were. But let's say they were a playoff team, just hypothetically speaking. He would probably have given it a go.
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. But he didn't have to, and they did the right thing by not making him come back. Keep him off the ice, let him do the light skating, and he'll be ready to go in the when September, October rolls around like everybody else. It's the Ryan Ellis thing for me again, because when you don't know, you're hoping against hope. You're set. Everything's just a hopeful statement, and we don't have anything that, like, Sean Couturier is a hopeful statement that you have some stuff to back it up with. Yeah, he had the surgery, but he was skating by the end of last year. Okay, that makes some sense. Be optimistic about it. Kevin Hayes played the end of the season, looked good doing it. Okay, be optimistic about him. You got nothing on Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis, you've got 4 games from last year.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
And what, 4 years left? 5 years left?
And no legitimate update whatsoever.
Yep.
Like, you needed something is kind of what I'm saying. Like, Farabee's update is something. I don't want to say it's nothing, but it just happened now. So you start to, like, right away when you see the 3 to 4 months pop up, you start the counting, right?
Right.
Okay, let's do the 4 months then. End of July, August, September, October. Well, all right, you're already into the season by the end of October, so best case scenario, it's 3 months, and he's back at maybe in the middle of training camp. Maybe a realistic expectation, potentially, is saying, can he be out for the season opener but practicing again so he's close?
Right.
Is it 2 weeks into the season, and we're talking end of October, and he hasn't missed that much time, but it's still significant?
A little bit of in baseball, we would use the term extended spring training.
Right. Or the other alternative that you're not going to get from this, because they're giving you a time frame of full recovery. But what if it's not perfect? And what if this is, next thing you know, it's Thanksgiving and he's just getting back, and a quarter of your season's gone without one of your best offensive players?
At that point, quite frankly, you start looking at where you're at in the lineup or where you're at in the standings, and if you're 10-19 at that point. Like, we're certainly not hurrying him back.
Well, right. I think so. That's fair. I mean, it kind of goes both ways, though, doesn't it? Like, you're also not hurrying him back if you start the season 10-5 either.
That's fair. No, that's true.
If you come out and you play well, and I'm not trying to make that an expectation.
Quite frankly, they shouldn't hurry him back no matter what.
Well, right, but I'm saying if you're winning, you don't feel like you need to go to that well yet because you're going, okay, you're surviving without him. He continues to get closer and closer, and,
right.
It becomes a benefit. It becomes, that extra addition that you just get. It's internal.
That
addition.
Extra juice when he's ready.
Right, but it's internal additions. You don't ever it's not. You don't have to do anything to go get him. He's there. It's when he's healthy. Okay, great. You get to a certain point where you survive without him, then great. But I just don't know, and that's part of why, to tie it back to the Tortorella thing, because I feel like, listen, first of all, and I felt this way with Alain Vigneault as well. You don't want to fall behind in a camp with this guy.
Okay. I'm going to ask you two related questions.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you not to elaborate too much.
Okay, that's fair. I know we have a lot of stuff to get to still.
Do you see a world where the Philadelphia Flyers make the playoffs next season?
Do I see one? Sure.
Okay.
It's a hesitant sure, but I say sure.
Now, my next question is, do you see a world where the Philadelphia Flyers are a good team next year?
What's your definition of good?
Realistic contender to win a couple of playoff rounds.
No.
Okay.
Not to win a couple of playoff
I think that's
rounds.
fair.
I mean, listen, anything can happen in a playoff round, sure. I'll not to try to not too crazy elaborate on it,
sure.
But I will say it like this. One of the things that I said about, and I think I said this on 97.3 at one point in time when talking about Tortorella is, listen, I think a successful season next year is not measured in how many games you win, how many, points you get, how many points out of a playoff spot you finish. I don't think it's measured by any of that. You could finish in dead last place for all I care. But if you're doing it while looking competitive and kind of having at least establishing an identity to your game, I think you've had a successful year.
Right.
Because
that's fair.
You need to see something let's go this way. Is anybody going to complain if his team finishes in dead last this year?
No.
Well, exactly.
Quite frankly, it's a pretty good year to finish dead last.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's because why? Because of who's going first next year. That's why.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Because that Connor kid. No, not that Connor kid. That other Connor kid.
No, not the one from 15. Yeah.
Not the one who still led the playoffs in scoring, by the way, even though they got eliminated in the third round.
I didn't win a game in the third.
Correct. And him and Draisaitl both had 33 points in 16 games. It was absurd.
And the next highest was somebody else we're going to talk about in a couple minutes.
Oh, we'll be talking about Cale Makar, don't you worry.
Oh, thanks. I say my favorite kind of jokingly, but at the same time, I do really like talking about the kid. He's so damn good. But beside the point.
One of these days, it's going to be You Would Think, the Cale Makar podcast.
I mean, that's the funny part is look, I love watching him. Don't get me wrong. That's still not the guy I gravitate towards when watching that team.
Okay. Do we want to dive into this, or is there more we have to talk about on Tortorella?
I'll put on the Flyer thing first because it ties into the Tortorella thing. Because you're asking me, you've also asked, is Tortorella, because he's a good enough coach to maximize guy, and that's why I brought up, if Patrick Brown's playing on this team next year, getting into the lineup, fourth line kind of stuff.
Right.
Can his play be maximized by a coach like John Tortorella?
I think it probably can.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because all you need is a guy who gives it, and
quite frankly, if you give him Patrick Brown centering Zach McEwen and who else is floating around down there? Just give me somebody. He'll get some jam out of that fourth line. Give me Wade Allison on that line. That's a fun little fourth line.
I'll give you Wade Allison, but please don't with the other two.
Listen.
Patrick Brown's under contract for next year, so and he's my 13.
Okay,
that's fine. If I need somebody in a pinch, he's my 13. That's fine.
And you're okay with it.
I'm not focusing in on McEwen, and I'm leaving spots open. I wrote down a lineup at one point in time. Hypothetically thinking, let's put the most natural big splash free agent into the lineup that we can, and you already know who it is. So,
is it Kadri or Johnny Hockey?
It's Johnny.
Okay, because it's one of the two.
So let's no, but I'm saying so. Let's just hypothetically speaking, naturally slide. And this is before the Farabee injury, so Farabee was part of this lineup,
Sure,
obviously. And you got Couturier and Hayes up the middle, and I even as again, the gut feeling that I have that I've had for a long time that Konechny is not going to be on this team because I feel like he's trade bait. I put him in that lineup because what I was really trying to do was price it out.
Although I think you're moving him just to try to get the money for Johnny Hockey.
No, I'll tell you who's not in that lineup. Who probably you're not gonna like hearing it, but I'll go there anyway because I have to. Obviously the one area where you can try to free up some cap space immediately is James Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah,
you've got to try to do that.
You have to.
And if you can somehow find a trade partner that takes the whole contract, it's your lucky day. Go ahead and sign off on that one right away. If you have to retain some money, if you can pull off the 5-2 split and retain $2 million, it's better than the buyout.
You're okay with that.
Well, it's better than the buyout, so you might as well take it.
And there's only 1 year of it left.
Well, and especially if it's straight up.
Yeah.
If you're not giving up anything else, no sweeteners, no picks, no nothing.
JVR with that money split for a conditional seventh.
Fine, whatever.
Right.
But I've heard this.
And the condition is that JVR has to score 65 goals.
I like that. But let's think about the possibility of throwing we all know Chuck Fletcher's seat is pretty warm at this point. That's an understatement, obviously.
I think it has to be.
So when you acquire a first-round pick for Claude Giroux, if you need to trade that pick to get all of JVR's salary off the books, you might, if you're in Chuck Fletcher's seat, you might do it because you might do it because of the fact
that the pick's not until 2024.
It's going to be it could be the only chance you have to utilize the pick. You're holding it for nothing.
And it might not be till 2025 if Florida falls off a random cliff that year. You're looking at a guy who's not going to help you. If you're looking at Florida as a good team, the pick's going to be in the back half of the round. You're looking at a guy who's not going to help you for 6, 7, 8 years. Chuck Fletcher doesn't care about that guy.
The organization doesn't.
He cares about right. Well, sure, but Chuck Fletcher in particular values his job far more than that guy who might help the GM after him.
Well, and listen, there's a lot of time between now and 2024's draft that for anything to happen to Chuck Fletcher, for that pick to be utilized. If nothing else, just be careful what you use it on if you're going to use it. If you need to do something else, if that first is valuable enough to improve your team with a real player, instead of just freeing up cap space. Now, granted, we did this last year, right? Because when Shane Gostisbehere gets traded with 2 picks to open up cap space, and the return is we're making a trade for Rasmus Ristolainen, that's what it's automatically associated with, right?
Yep.
Now, if you trade the first round pick in 2024 with James Van Riemsdyk, free up cap space.
It's associated with the Drew trade.
No, I'm saying because who do you sign in response? Yep. If you sign Johnny Gaudreau, then it's like you traded the first pick for the first rounder in 2024 for Johnny Gaudreau.
Quite frankly, I don't think that's the worst trade.
Right, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Not?
But I think the fan base accepts that one pretty easily.
But you can't if that's only going to get you half the battle.
But here's the thing, though: what's Johnny commanding in free agency?
Oh, it's going to be a lot.
Right, hometown discount. Does he get under 10? Probably not.
Nope, not when you came off a season with 115 points.
And listen, I like Johnny Gaudreau. I love me some Johnny Hockey.
Sure.
If he was the kind of player that could take over games and dominate games and single-handed, if he was Austin Matthews, done. Done. 11, 12, whatever you want.
Well, that's right. It's why Connor McDavid makes $12.5 million, right?
Right. And if Johnny Gaudreau is coming in to a young, cheap team as kind of a fill the gap, if, for example, the Detroit Red Wings signed Johnny Gaudreau and he was coming in as kind of a centerpiece as part of the core, but not the guy.
Right.
I think it makes a whole lot of sense. The Flyers need way more help, sorry, Johnny, than Johnny Gaudreau can give them by himself.
Well, and here's the thing with that, right? First of all, absolutely correct. If he signs here, he becomes the face of the franchise, player-wise.
For better or for worse, you might as well stick the say on him, and they probably do.
Absolutely, no doubt, without question. I'm switching the tab back over to
That's
Tortorella.
fine.
It's all this
They
time
absolutely throw a say on him.
Well, no, I don't. I wouldn't go that far.
Really?
I mean, look, I'm still of the belief they don't need a captain next year. But while we're on the subject, or while we have the Tortorella banner at the bottom, there is one player in particular that was especially thrilled with this decision.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a captain today, if you were giving me that, hey, listen, no explanations, don't elaborate, just tell me who the next captain of the team is, I think I'm telling you Cam Atkinson.
Okay. I don't disagree with that.
Because I think that of anybody, he gave you the most accountability last year, and he's going to be the best bridge between Tortorella and the players who have never been coached by him.
For those who insist that the Flyers brand is about playing with heart and grittiness, no pun intended,
right,
and passion and desire, look no further than Cam Atkinson, just for the record. That very small man plays with very large heart.
Sure, exactly. And I should mention, when I was talking about that lineup that I was drawing up a little bit, Atkinson was in that top 6, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
But think about that. Okay, so what if it's Gaudreau with Couturier, Atkinson, Farabee, Hayes, and Konechny?
Now, question for you.
Is that a legit top 6?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what I'm just pointing out, that you can still construct a legit top 6 on this roster.
Let's say the Philadelphia Flyers signed Johnny Gaudreau.
Right.
Opening night, who was wearing number 13?
Oh, I've already had that floated by me.
Does Kevin Hayes bow down, step aside on that, or does Johnny Gaudreau wear 31 or something?
No, no, especially a local kid, he would never dare.
No, he never would. But
you know why I'm saying
yeah,
that, right? Like, he would never dare.
No, I know.
Kelly's number.
I don't know the situation, but what if Pelly's family gave him the blessing as the local kid coming home?
I'm trying to think of the numbers that are available potentially.
It's not retired.
No, it's not. But it's been.
I know the story. Don't you know?
I know. You know what? I'm trying to think, because Johnny's roughly our age, a little younger.
Yeah.
So he grew up in Legion of Doom time.
He's about 6 weeks younger than me.
Okay. So who's to say he doesn't go for a number like 10? Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Leclerc, little association. Who's to say he doesn't go for something like that?
Okay.
I was half willing to joke about it and sit there and say, you know what, he's going to take 61.
Maybe he goes 37.
No,
Eric Desjardins.
No, I was going to. But seriously, did you catch what I'm trying to do with that? Maybe he takes 61. Yeah. Reverse.
Maybe.
No, reverse Clark.
Maybe he goes full-blown Jersey Shore and just goes with 69. You never know.
Jersey Shore or Shoresy?
Listen, have you watched Shoresy?
I haven't yet. I got to get on it.
You have to get on it.
I'm saving this for the next episode, but it's been a little bit of a month for me.
Listen to me. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, I'm looking directly at the camera. I'm pointing at you right now. If you're listening to this show right now, go to Hulu. Type in Shoresy, Shoresy.
Yes.
It is 6 30-minute episodes. It will take you 3 hours. Go. Anyway.
Yes, I will get on that at some point very soon. I promise that, because I've already seen clips, by the way. It is hysterical. The clips are hysterical.
John Morasti and the Nolan brothers are both, in every episode, featured players. And it's been a while since you've seen Nasty John Morasti, and he looks fantastic.
Okay.
And I'm saying that because he would tear my arms off and beat me with them.
All right. But either way, we'll see what happens. For right now, I want to go back to Tortorella for 1 second and put a bow on him because of the fact that
John Tortellini, Flyers head coach.
Oh, here we go. I've seen that come up more times than I can.
Listen.
It just happens.
It will be a great 18 to 28 months.
Okay, so first of all, here's the thing. If nothing else, you're going to get entertainment.
Absolutely.
Because if things don't go well, then you're watching for him. You're watching for his reaction. You're even watching the post game for him.
January 1st, 2025. Is he the head coach? It's 2.5 years from now.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. And I think that's a pretty reasonable over-under.
And I'll tell you what. I say that for two reasons. You said 2.5 years, or he would be halfway through his third season, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I highly doubt that half a season after they finally stop paying Alain Vigneault while paying John Tortorella, that they're going to do the same thing over again. That said, I think by that point, you better have something better to put out on the ice than what you had last year that he can work with even better. So, but right now, think about everything he said in the press conferences, everything he's doing. So a week ago, it was more of an informal, and I didn't go because I didn't really know when it was going to be, that kind of thing. He did an informal meet and greet with media members. He did a question and answer session with season ticket holder type stuff at the skates at the training center. Sorry. And he's done things like he went to the graduation ceremony for Snyder Hockey. Like, he's trying really hard to put himself out there to make himself part of this community. He's talked immensely about the amount that he loves the city. And has thought about coaching here for a long time, back to 2004.
Well, right. And so I actually entirely forgot that he coached that Lightning team.
Oh, really? How
it
rips your heart out.
I know. And it's one of those things that I think I had kind of trauma blocked it out of my head.
Right.
Because Tampa just absolutely owned us for about 6 months there.
Yeah.
We're not talking about it. It's fine. Trauma. So I had blocked out of my mind that John Tortorella was the coach of that team, and I heard him mention it, and I just went, "Oh, John, ow."
Yeah.
Why are you ripping the Band-Aid off like that? I forgot about that, and ow, that still hurts. Thank you so much, Vincent LeCavalier.
But from that, he used the word, and this was what I was prepared to ask him if I would have gotten through on the intro call. He used the word that I was going to use, and I swear I wasn't going to be pandering if I used it after he used it, but the standard that is Flyers hockey. That's what you're trying to establish again. It's non-existent right now. Your standard is gone because the play on the ice is bad, the attendance is down, people are disinterested. You got to build it all back up, and he knows it.
Yep.
And because he knows it, he's doing already trying to do things that get himself out there.
And
so
it would be a great year for NHL Network to do Behind the Glass.
Well, can I say something about that too? Because I feel like, to an extent, that really endeared people to Alain Vigneault when it started, because he was new.
Be a bleeping Flyer.
Right. He comes in. That's the first thing you get from this guy, essentially. And but then they were good throughout the course of that season.
They were good.
So as you go through that process, as you go through everything, and he's having a good, obviously he's having a good time because they're winning.
The message is fresh. Yep.
Well, not only that, but when you're ending press conferences with I'm going to have a martini tonight and I'll get to you later. And I just tried to put on that AV smile that he would too, because he would get this big grin on his face, I'm going to have a martini and I'll get back to you. And he'd do it that too, which is really funny. But that was the fun of it, right? And that was
sure.
That's the honeymoon phase. And eventually it ends. I don't even know if there's going to be a honeymoon phase with John Tortorella, because of the fact that John Tortorella just comes in and starts hammering home the point. We got to be tougher.
Fair enough.
So, and the thing is does the message, can the message get stale over time? Of course it can. It happens to everybody. This is the thing. That's what you're going to hear no matter who the coach is anywhere. It happened with Bruce Cassidy. It happened with Barry Trotz. They're pretty well-known coaches. They recently won Jack Adams Awards.
Worth noting, by the way, that Barry Trotz has decided to take the season off and will not be coaching.
The story is, by the way, and it hasn't really been
management
confirmed.
in Nashville.
Well, no. It hadn't really been confirmed by anybody on the Flyers side, but the rumor is he was offered the Flyers job first. So Tortorella was not offered the job first.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
But the Crossing Broad report that Anthony Sanfilippo had that said he was not only offered the job, but the job was going to be at $7 million a year, would have made him the highest paid coach in the league, and he still said no.
Wow. Blank check indeed.
Now,
while they're still paying Alain Vigneault.
Now granted,
insanity.
It's a little different. The story evolves even further now, because If he takes the Winnipeg job, then it's about you.
Sure.
When he takes no job at all, it's about him. Like,
right.
I want the time away. I'm not thinking about it right now. That's like
he's enjoying some time off. He deserves it.
Sure. Well, because I saw somebody. I wish I could remember who it was who tweeted. It was a national guy. I just don't remember which one. Who said he hasn't had a season off. Like, he's coached consecutively from Nashville to Washington to the Islanders for 20 years. More than that, actually. But
give the man a year off with his kids.
The guy needs some time if he wants some time. I know he's got some family stuff. Like, if he wants some time away, he wants some time away. Let's put it this way. Tortorella, in that informal, meet and greet with the media, said this is the last coaching job he's going to take. This is it.
Interesting.
And I get it. He's 64.
Sure.
He just turned 64 a couple days ago, by the way. So
Come on, John. Hold on for 5 years, Johnny.
I mean, I think he's going to be fine.
Oh, yeah. And he can always step right back over to television. But, all right, let's talk about the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
We will talk more about John Tortorella as it goes, as we get more quotes. I imagine it will become very easy for us to think of show titles for quite a long time, because John's going to be a gold mine for that. Moving over to some quotes. We got some really good quotes out of the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche, who defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games, including 2-1 in Game 6.
I'm putting my hands up because I got one right.
Yeah.
That was my pick at the start of the playoffs. I got one right.
This was an incredible series. The title of our last show was the 2 best teams. And there was a rocky start. It didn't necessarily start as the most tight competitive series, but by the end, man.
Game 1 was, but then the next 2 were pretty rough. But the last 2 especially were 2 of the best games of the entire playoff, practically.
Those are, man. So I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah. I
do have a little bit of a mental block at the start of the pandemic, so remembering anything pre-pandemic is pretty tough.
That's fair.
But those might be the 2 best hockey games I've watched since the start of the pandemic.
Well, okay, so in
2+ years, they were phenomenal, incredible, high-level hockey games.
Well, and here's the thing: if you're drawing the line at March of 2020, there, I mean, maybe the only other game that I can, or not the only other, but some of the other games that I can think of that really rank up there. I mean, the 5 overtime between Columbus and Tampa.
I was going to say, that has to be up there just for the history of it.
Tampa, the game that Tampa won in overtime, not 5, but in overtime to move on against Columbus was a really good game.
Absolutely.
But I get your point because, and I don't want to take away from the fact that I do recall Tampa and the Islanders having some really good games over those series. I don't want to take away from that at all. It's just like, you know what? Like, I feel like when we got to the Cup Final the last 2 years, it was kind of like, all right, we're not fooling anybody here. There's a really, really elite team playing and a team that's kind of like just happy to be here.
Yes. And both times the elite team was Tampa Bay.
Right. And it was house money. And we knew that kind of.
Yep.
Like, don't get me wrong. I think Dallas has an incredibly bright future.
Dallas was running on fumes at that point.
Sure, of course. And Montreal they caught a wave. Obviously, it was the total opposite this year. But you know what? Montreal this year, the last half of the year anyway, is exactly what I would hope the Flyers are next year. Not in terms of, hey, they win or they lose. But
they're going to be fun.
But they felt more competitive. They felt more fun. And they felt like they had a sense of direction with Marty St. Louis coaching.
If Carey Price comes back healthy, they're a fun team next year.
They probably are. Yeah. I would say so.
But either way, Colorado wins. Nicholas Aubé-Kubel drops the cup heading into the pile, dents it on the ice, which the keeper of the cup confirmed was the first time in history that it got dented on the ice.
Well, first time for him.
Well, with him, sure, fair enough. But congratulations, Nick. You won the cup. Great. But man, they're going to make fun of you forever and ever.
First of all, to you for not burying the lead there. That's fun.
The most important thing, clearly.
Second of all, leave it to a guy like Nick Aubé-Kubel there who didn't play in the actual game to trip over his own skates.
He got chirped. He got chirped relentlessly on the flight home.
On all their faces when it happened, the picture that came up that was snapped literally as they recognized it was the best thing I've ever seen.
I demand. Do you remember the picture from 2019 of the St. Louis Blues flying home to St. Louis in the plane with Ryan O'Reilly with the Conn Smythe, and you know the picture I'm talking about?
I think I do, yeah.
I demand to see the picture with Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon, both hammered in these seats with the shirts wide open. Come on, we know they exist.
I want somebody to take a video camera to Nate's party. If he wants Sidney Crosby to get wasted, like,
oh my God,
somebody better have a camera.
Sid's private security is going to confiscate every cell phone in that joint. Let's be completely honest. Also, you're going to have to bring a friggin' gas mask to that parade in Colorado. Come on now.
Oh well, okay.
Come on now.
I got you.
Mile High City, ayo. So Cale Makar wins
everything.
So since our last show, he won the Norris Trophy. He won the Stanley Cup. He won the Conn Smythe. He becomes the first player in NHL history to win those 3 awards, the Norris Trophy, the Stanley Cup, the Conn Smythe, as well as the Hobey Baker and the Calder Trophy. He's the first player in history to hold all 5 of those awards. This man is 23 years old and probably getting better.
The first thing I think of when stuff like that comes out, by the way, is I just don't even want to, you have no choice but to think about it, and then you don't want to think about what you were doing at 23, and you go, it's so insignificant. Look at everything he's accomplished.
It's ridiculous. And he...
better, by the way. He's only going to keep getting better.
I know. He's probably got 3 more years of just straight upward growth. Okay. I have heard people putting him already in the top 5 in the league. Now, I don't necessarily know if I'm willing to do that, but if your top 5 is in some order, this is not a ranking, McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Makar. I've heard that list.
There's one problem with that list.
Sid's not there. I know.
No, I don't even know if it's that.
Okay.
I think somebody for Tampa's got to be in that group.
Yeah. The problem is I think their most likely candidate is Andrei Vasilevsky, and I think goalies just have to be separate.
But goalies are you do goalies in a different category. It's not the same thing.
So is it Hedman then? Who's the best of the Tampa Bay Lightning? I don't think they have one individual superstar. They have 3 that are just incredibly good.
I mean, Braden Point's got to be up there, especially for how much it looked like they missed him down the stretch.
Yeah, I think the combination
Braden Point is that good.
Yeah. And losing Braden Point really hurt them. Losing Anthony Cirelli was the death blow.
I mean, he played, but
but he wasn't.
At what strength? Exactly.
That was 20% Braden Point, and
honest to goodness, and this is the sad part about it. Braden Point's probably their best forward at this point.
Okay.
No pun intended when I say point that many times in a sentence, but it was they all I recognized. I guess it was game 4 that they had to do either game 4 or game 5, but I recognized it. They played better without him, which was down in the Cup Final anyway. They tried to get him back for those first 2 games. Obviously, game 1 they didn't win, but they were in it. Game 2 they get blown out of the water, and it's they're not as good with him on the ice right now.
Right.
They actually would be more beneficial to them to pull him off because whatever
he was detrimental.
He can't do it.
Yep. And they were just attacking him.
I admire the guy for trying. I absolutely do. It's just I don't think there was just nothing you could do.
No, and the kid is 22 years old or whatever it is, whatever ridiculous number his age is right now.
He points a little older than that. I think he was 22 when all that started.
Okay, fair enough. But he's another guy who's just going to get better for the next couple of years, and it's not even fair that Tampa got him.
Okay, yeah, Braden Point is 26 now. So
he's 26. Wow. Holy. Okay.
So it feels right then. That's what I'm saying. He feels like he's in, maybe not even in, entering the prime. We're getting now. This is when you're going to get the best years of Braden Point. If you think he's good,
yeah, because I just watch him get smarter every single year.
Sure. Well, and listen, it not for nothing. It's not, and I'm not trying to downplay these guys at all, but eventually Steven Stamkos is not going to be the number one guy. He's getting older. Victor Hedman's getting older. Like, they've been around forever with that team.
Right.
Braden Point's still relatively new. So is, like, to an extent, you could say Kucherov is a little bit, but Kucherov's even got more veteran status than
Well, right. And we've seen some guys really cement themselves over the course of this playoff run for the Tampa Bay Lightning. For example, Eric Chernak had just a fantastic run out of them. Andre Palat had a stellar run. Alex Killorn looked phenomenal. These guys, it's incredible how good of a job Steve Yzerman did drafting. Let's be honest.
Sure. Of course.
And, right. So the fact that Detroit, by the way, Detroit has $35 million in cap space, and four of their major players are up this year. They're going to be able to make dramatic, massive roster overhauls over the next 2 years, depending on how aggressive Steve Yzerman wants to get.
I think it's hilarious, ironic, and insert superlative here, that the two teams right now that feel like the best, we said it before the series started, but the two teams that really feel like the best in the league right now are being, or at least were built primarily by two players who were leading their teams that were the best in the late 90s, essentially. Like
that is really funny.
Like, you're talking about a Steve Yzerman built team against a Joe Sakic built team, and both are great.
It really is a shame, and I've mentioned this before, but it really is a shame that Steve Yzerman wasn't there to shake Joe Sakic's hand at the end of this. Right? Like, I understand he works for Detroit, blah, 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 but, like, this is still his team. Like, this is, they have slight turnover in the bottom six, but it's essentially the same roster year over year.
What if this is only the beginning for Colorado at this point, and Detroit starts to emerge with Steve Yzerman building that one?
I could see it happening. Detroit's,
and then not only do you get
the problem is Detroit's in the East. It's not quite the same.
What do you mean, though?
No, they're not in the same division anymore. They don't play a whole bunch of times every year. They're not going to play in the first or second round of the playoffs. That's what
I'm saying. Wouldn't you love them in a Stanley Cup Final against each other?
Yeah.
To put them against each other in a playoff series again, and again,
quite frankly,
Yzerman.
Quite frankly, Alex Nedeljkovic might be the goalie that gets them there, and holy crow, Carolina's going to feel stupid if that's how that happens.
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
That's still one of the most disgraceful roster decisions I've ever seen. Anyway, congratulations to Colorado. It really was an incredible series. Like, we saw just games 4, 5, and 6 were spectacular hockey games.
Yeah, I mean, well, game 4, obviously, and everything within it aside, like, because at the end of the day, and I went on the radio the day after this game, because there was obviously some controversy, and I stayed up after the game, the hour after, as they're talking about it, because I didn't even realize, like, in the moment, you didn't even realize there was anything to talk about. Then all of a sudden there was buzz, because John Cooper took one question and got up and left, and everybody's going, "You'll see what I mean on the video." Oh, wait, let's go look. Oh,
too many men.
Wow.
Right.
No, and when SportsCenter had the one look, I watched that, but I sat here, I'm not joking you, for probably about 25 minutes watching the same minute over and over and over again.
Yep.
To the point where, like I said this on the radio, I caught the fact that every player for Colorado on the ice made a line change at least 25 seconds before the goal was scored, except for McKinnon and Kadri. Yep. That was the only change. It's not like it was a full, fire wagon change here. It was one player.
Here's the reason why you can't call it.
It's a judgment call for one.
Sorry?
Judgment call for one. So, like,
well, right.
That's
no, but that, like, for those that are nitpicking, those that are upset about it, yes, Colorado had 6 players on the ice there momentarily, and I'm not going to talk about bench safe zones and getting off the ice. No, I'm not going to talk about that.
I highlighted it anyway. Like, I get it.
Colorado had 6 players on the ice. Tampa Bay had 7.
Yeah, they were making a fire wagon change, not quite,
right. I understand, but, like,
the real answer is not even in that. You don't even have to look to that one. The real answer was, hey, did anybody remember the only goal that was scored against the Islanders in Game 7 last year? The only one in the conference final that Tampa Bay won. How many guys were on the ice for Tampa Bay for that one?
A whole bunch.
Barry Trotz knows.
Yep.
So, Like
they can't keep getting away with this.
It's so not about that. Like, to me,
No, absolutely not.
And beside the point, like, because you can't, like, don't make that challengeable or anything crazy. Like,
no,
if you go so far as to make something like a line change challengeable, then everything in the game's going to be challengeable, and you will have challenges galore.
We also have to put a timer on the challenges.
Yeah,
because twice in the Stanley Cup Finals, we saw John Cooper. Let's say maximize his decision-making time. He really took that decision-making window and stretched it out as much as he could. And
you started to see as this series went on, with stuff like that, because John Cooper was very outspoken about, like, not outspoken, but like he definitely milked the challenge time.
Right.
He was outspoken about the line.
He tried to challenge it after Kemper came to the bench and got his equipment adjusted.
Right.
And he very clearly had like 2.5 minutes to look at it. Like, Kemper was getting his equipment adjusted for a long time. We have to have a pitch clock on this. You have to.
There's supposed to be one in place. It's 30 seconds.
We have to be enforcing it, even if you want to bump it to 60. Right. Even if you want to bump it to 60, because 30 is a little quick. I'll give you that, because it's probably going to take you 5 or 10 seconds to get the replay. And then you got to look at it a couple times. You got to make a judgment decision. 30 is a little quick. Right. But if you put a 60-second timer on it that goes off with, like, right after the goal goes in the net, do it like a timeout timer. And when the horn goes off, you make a call. Challenge, yes or no.
So
thumbs up, thumbs down, like the arena.
Right. Now, I want to say this because I feel like you saw it as the series went on from all of that type of stuff. Like, you knew it was going to happen because they had already won 2 in a row. You saw the target on the back. You saw the villainous nature of the team, in the sense that, look, everybody wants to beat the team that's the best too, and everybody kind of starts to love to hate the team that keeps winning.
Absolutely.
Like you saw it with every complaint that they had about this, that, or whatever. Like,
yeah, I don't need to hear John Cooper whining about calls. Quite frankly, I don't like anybody whining about calls, especially once we get into the conference finals or Stanley Cup final.
No, I hear you. And I thought, like,
because they're not going to call it.
And I thought at the end of the series, he didn't go there, which is good. Like,
yeah.
Tip your hat to Colorado. Focus on that. He turned around and said the only bad break they got was that Kucherov's stick broke. By the way, did you see that clip that was floating? I don't know if you saw a clip that was floating around. He went to the bench to get a stick and he chucked his gloves at the equipment
guy. The equipment manager didn't have the stick ready.
Left.
And Nikita Kucherov takes his gloves off and throws them at. Not tosses to, throws at.
Right. But that's why I'm saying that's what creates that villainous nature of them, because you see Pat Maroon two-handing Josh Manson in front of the net because he didn't like the fact that call went against them. Like, so these are things that happen in a game, and you take them and you go with them. There was how much time? Like, there was a period and another 6-7 minutes left, or 5-6 minutes left in the second, when they go down 2-1, and he's slashing the back of a guy with 2 hands.
So if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I make the occasional professional wrestling reference. Tampa Bay turned heel the second Nikita Kucherov came out and blasted the Montreal fans for celebrating a win when they were up 3-0 in the series.
Yeah,
he comes out and goes, "What are they celebrating for?" Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you didn't hate them already, and some people did just because they were so good, but if you didn't hate them already, they did that and then closed the series out the next game and wore shirts about how over the cap they were. Full-blown heel turn. Full-blown Macho Man dropping the leg at Bash at the Beach 96, joining the NWO. Full-blown heel turn. Nikita Kucherov does not care what you think. Number one bull. Number one.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
But seriously, like, here's the thing. I almost don't mind it then, because, like, okay, you just won the Stanley Cup for the second year in a row. First of all, it felt like a real Stanley Cup win, not the year before when you did it in an empty building.
Fair enough.
I get it. Emotions are high. You're drinking. Like, clear.
Hey, there were 5,000 fans in Montreal.
Like, but let's do this. Like, let's be full. Like, we saw it. Nikita Kucherov comes in to do that post game. He doesn't have a shirt on. He's got 2 cans of Bud Light with him. Like, he's having the time of his life, and he's probably not quite in control of, like, the filter's not probably turned on.
And his filters were already the thinnest to begin with.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I get it, but it's not, like, that's why I'm saying it's not that. It was, like, and this is kind of a football thing at this point, but why do people like when Tom Brady loses? Because it's not
he's Darth Vader. He's the bad guy.
But it's not just because he wins all the time. It's because when he loses, he's looking for a call. He's looking for what just happened. Why did it happen? I'm pissed off about it. And it's fine to be pissed off about losing. Like, I honestly, for Tampa Bay, I think that not winning this series and being the hurt team by the end of it and the tired team at the end of it humbles them.
I will give Tom Brady credit. He's gotten pretty cool as he's gotten older. I saw a TikTok of him a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, "Hey, guys, the tuck rule game,
I know.
It was a fumble." Like, it's just the funniest thing. He's got a sense of humor about it at this point.
You know, doing a tell-all documentary will do that to you. But
having $1 billion will also give you a little bit of security to kind of say whatever you want.
What do you mean having $1 billion? It's signing the contracts to play football, to then broadcast football. And oh, by the way, he's got his own, like, was it a marketing company or a multimedia company or whatever the hell it is?
Oh, and also your wife. And also, your wife is a multi-millionaire supermodel in her own right. Tom Brady's never allowed to complain about anything. I don't care if Tom Brady's house burns down. God willing, it doesn't happen. God willing, if it does, nobody gets injured. Tom Brady's not allowed to say a word about it. He's got insurance. I don't care.
He's got more money than the insurance covers.
Right.
I mean, for real. But either way, but you, like, I think that this is going to humble Tampa Bay a little bit. Like,
okay,
you got put in your place a little bit. Like, you're like, I'm not taking anything away from them. 6 times in the conference final and 3 times in a cup final in 8 years is no slouch of an achievement. You're right up there.
I also think there's a real chance they come back next year and just go scorched earth.
Sure.
And just come in like the Jordan Bulls and go 72-10. Not literally, but could you imagine? Oh my God.
It actually kind of wouldn't surprise me.
Right. You just need Brian Elliott to win 10 or 15 games for you, and Andre Vasilevsky will do the rest.
It's just, I mean,
they win the President's Trophy in January.
Yeah, I mean, because John Cooper was right, because I did listen to what he said at the end of the whole thing in his press conference, and first of all, I thought it was really classy of him to bring up all of his assistants with him like he did when they won. You know, we did this together winning, we'll do it together losing. But, you know, he credited Colorado, but you saw the determination, like, hey, listen, it's okay. It's like, it's not just that we lost to a really good team, obviously. So that's not the that's not the thing about who says we're done.
Yeah. And that's what you should
don't
say.
Take away from the 6 of the last 8 years conference finals. Like, just because they don't enter the conversation with the Islanders of the 80s and teams like that put together more than 2 in a row, there's nothing wrong with being 2 in a row.
Are they the best team of the post lockout era?
Yes, without question.
Of the cap era?
Yeah, I'd say so. Because it only gets harder, and to do it in the middle of like what they were doing it in the middle of, where there is like, even when Chicago was winning 3 times in 5-6 years like they did, and the 2 for LA and all that type of stuff, for the back-to-back for Pittsburgh, everything was normal, and you adjusted for inflation at that point. You knew that salaries were going to go up, so the cap went up, and it continued to progress. They did this with no movement.
Yep.
They had to do some crazy gymnastics.
They had to sit Nikita Kucherov for an entire season.
And beyond that,
and he was conveniently ready to play for Game 1 of the playoffs. Isn't it crazy how that works out?
Sure, but there's no taking away from how they got those players. They built it over a process.
Yep. They drafted incredibly well. They developed incredibly well.
Now, if we're going to talk about that, we have to talk about Colorado's process. Because
Absolutely.
That's the process. I wrote about that. I actually called it, like, the article is Avalanche win Stanley Cup by trusting the process. Not trying to make a Sixers reference there, by the way. But here's the thing. Like, you bring Joe Sakic in, and it's 2013. Or it's 14-15, I guess, is the first season he really took. 13-14, they gave him like the executive vice president type thing. Like he was an executive advisor, I think was the title. And so the next year he formally took over as the GM. Now by that point, you already have Landeskog, you already have McKinnon, you already have made the trade for Eric Johnson that brought him to Colorado. And that's pretty much your group at that point. And then under Sakic, the two other guys they get before this whole roster really takes shape is they traded for the rights. I believe he wasn't signed yet, for the rights to JT Compher, and you draft Mikko Rantanen. That was the two things. And that's what they went into the 2016-17 season with. Those are the only 5 holdovers from their worst season under Sakic. It was, and there ironically enough was a reason for it, because your coach that year was supposed to be Patrick Waugh. And Patrick Waugh stepped down maybe 2 weeks before training camp and said, here you go. And Joe Sakic did the only thing he could think to do, which was literally grab the previous year's Calder Cup winner, who wasn't even with his organization. He was with Columbus's. So grab Jared Bednar, bring him in, and let's see where it goes. And the first year was awful.
Following that 16-17 season, on June 28th, 2017, Steve Dangle fires up Twitter.
Oh, I know. I already know what you're going to say because I've already seen it.
It's fantastic, and I'm going to tell our audience here. Make sure to take a look at this. He tweets, Joe Sakic really ought to be fired. Look at this nonsense. And then links to that day's cap friendly for the Colorado Avalanche. And it was a mess, and it looked bad, and they had a whole bunch of cap space, and they didn't have any players signed, and it looked bad. It looked bleak, and they were coming off a really poor season, and it looked bleak.
Right.
That tweet was retweeted by Freezing Cold Takes on Sunday evening.
Don't you worry. Dangle brought it up too.
Or on Monday evening. He did.
He fessed up to it.
And he's had a great humor about it. But man, and I was listening to the show at the time. I remember them having this conversation, and they talked about the fact that Joe Sakic's the one who got them into this mess. Should he really be the one who's allowed to get them out of it? And then he proceeded to hit on every single first-round pick he made over the next 4 years, and all those players just helped them win the Stanley Cup.
Excuse me for a minute while I pull up the article, because I have I have like in quick list form.
Right, because it's Makar, Byram, Newhook. Is there one more name there?
No, I'll go through. Well, in terms of draft picks,
like 3 or 4 years in a row they drafted monsters.
I did it in order. So how about we just do that? So this is all 2017 and beyond. Okay, so in 2017, this is what I have that happens. Or actually, in 2017, he only did one thing outside of the draft pick for Makar. He acquired Sam Girard in a trade.
Solid.
Yep.
Was that with Nashville?
Yes. Sam Girard was part of the
Matt Duchene trade.
Yes, part of the Matt Duchene trade tree. Yes, absolutely.
Sam Girard is part of the Matt Duchene trade.
By the way, who played a grand total of 7 games this playoff because he got hurt for the rest of the playoff.
Yep, they're going to come back theoretically stronger next year because all their guys are young enough that they're all developing. You get to take more of a load off of Eric Johnson.
I know, right? So that was 2017. 2018. Pavel Francouz signs, and Logan O'Connor was signed to an entry-level contract as an undrafted free agent out of the University of Denver.
Wow, he was on your roster for this series.
Yep. Okay, so 2019. This is where it really starts to fire up because a lot of stuff happened in the last 3 years.
You start drafting studs here.
Well, 2019, your draft picks are Bowen Byram and Alex Newhook. Also in 2019, you acquire Nazem Kadri and Andrei Burakovsky in separate trades.
Yep.
In 2019, you sign Valerie Nichushkin, who was bought out by Dallas that offseason.
Yep.
2020, you trade for Devon Taves. And then 2021, or leading into this 2021-2022 season, they acquired Darcy Kemper in a trade, signed Ryan Murray, Jack Johnson, and Darren Helm, claimed Nick Aube-Kubel off waivers, and then at the trade deadline, grabbed Josh Manson, Andrew Cogliano, Nico Sturm, And oh yeah, one guy who scored the series clinching goal in both the Western Conference Final and the Stanley Cup Final, Arturi Lehkonen.
Yep. By the way, one of the names you mentioned there was Nazem Kadri.
Yes.
Do you remember the Nazem Kadri trade?
Hang on a minute.
You know what it cost the Colorado Avalanche to acquire Nazem Kadri?
Hang on, because this is I've kind of been on a trade tree kick the last couple of days, so I know that was it was part of a trade tree too.
It's Kadri, Calle Rosen, and a third.
Oh, hold on a minute. I looked
for what?
at this.
Yep. Yeah, I'm giving you the one half.
Oh, I know what it is. I think I know. It was the deal that Tyson Barrie and there was another player.
Yep.
But Tyson Barrie was in that deal. Oh God, what the hell was the guy's name? It's like right there too. You're gonna have to tell me, but I know you're gonna say it, I'm gonna hate myself for it.
Initials AK.
Alex Kerfoot.
There you go.
I knew it was an Alex. I'm sitting here going, Alex?
Tyson Barrie, Alex Kerfoot, and a sixth.
Okay, yeah.
Tyson Barrie is solid, had a good little bounce back season. Yeah, decent little player. Kerfoot is and a 6th-round pick is nothing. And you got Nazem Kadri and a third. Hello?
Did the third turn out to be anything? Did we know?
So one of the long-running jokes on 32 Thoughts podcast is that there really shouldn't be a GM of the Year award because the GM of the Year award is the Stanley Cup.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Did Joe Sakic win the GM of the Year award?
I think they do it after, I don't know.
I think they vote after the second round.
They do, but I don't think they present it until after this. They do it at the end, at the draft. They present it.
I agree.
That's what it is.
Right.
We'll see.
But Joe Sakic should have won it because hello.
Yeah, he should. He should win it. So a couple little tidbits here for you from like this roster because I naturally I nerded up for some of this and like went in and looked up some goofy stuff because I can. So first of all, this is not really a nerdy thing. This is just something we remember talking about because a few months before the playoffs started, we were sitting here on trade deadline watch because we were talking about one player in particular who certainly had some options on the table.
Yep.
And I'm not revisiting that. He made his choice. That's the end of that, right? But do you remember the proposed trade that Colorado had in mind to get Claude Giroux?
It was
presumably. Let's just presumably.
Right.
It doesn't have to be to an exact science, but
yeah,
I'll give you a hint because it was one prospect and
was it Jake Sanderson?
No. Okay. It was Justin Barron was a defenseman.
Justin Barron, right.
And presumably it would have been one of the first-round picks that Colorado has in the next 2 years. Not this year's, the following.
Right.
How about instead of trading either of those first-round picks, they didn't do that. They didn't have to. They kept them both. They have their first-round pick next year and the year after that, so 23 and 24.
Obscene.
It is obscene. But do you know what they traded instead? Like, they used Justin Barron. Justin Barron got traded at the trade deadline. So did a second-round pick next year. Do you know who they got?
Okay.
Arturi Lehkonen. Now, the reason I bring that up has nothing per se to do with Claude Giroux. The reason I bring that up is because you make your deals at the deadline to think you're putting the final pieces together.
Sure.
And one wrong move, like Florida was getting people at the deadline. It wasn't just Giroux, by the way. They were making a lot of deals. They brought in a lot of people. So if you're bringing in
Florida was wheeling and dealing.
So if you're bringing in a lot of people, you're thinking like Colorado did too. I just mentioned Colorado acquired 4 players at the trade deadline or around those times. If you're piecing together guys to do that, then you're hoping that it completes the puzzle to perfection. Everything fits. It works out. And obviously for Florida, it didn't work out.
Right.
Now,
you got chewed up and spit out by a dynasty.
So, but imagine if Colorado makes that trade with the Flyers instead and gets Claude Giroux. Is Claude Giroux giving you what Lehkonen did in these playoffs?
Maybe. We don't know.
He could. We don't know. But are they also standing there with the Stanley Cup at the end of the thing?
That's fair.
You don't know.
That's
the thing. Like this.
Hindsight's always 20/20 on it, and 20/20 here led them to a cup.
This turned out to be the perfect combination. Now, do you want a crazy fact out of the whole thing?
Okay.
So, I counted up 21 different skaters played in the playoffs for Colorado.
Okay.
Out of the 21, 16 scored goals.
Okay.
And out of the 16 that scored at least one goal in the Stanley Cup playoffs, they had, because I kind of found it interesting that guys like Nichushkin was scoring a bunch in the final, right? And you had other guys who did it at various points.
He made a dark horse run at a Conn Smythe bid, in my opinion.
I did, yeah. For a little bit. But you had all these guys scoring all over the place, right? So by doing so, by having different guys who were scoring kind of in bunches sometimes, 10 different players scored a game-winning goal.
Holy smokes.
Okay. So that's a lot, right? Now, obviously I gave you we've already discussed 2 of them specifically because we already mentioned Lehkonen, who had 2 of them, by the way, at least.
Yep.
Actually, I think he had more than that. He might have had more. He might have.
I think
4.
he had 3.
He had 4, I think, actually.
Jesus.
I know. No, 4 out of 16 wins.
Talk about a dark horse, Conn Smythe.
But and we already talked about Nazem Kadri, who had 1 in Game 4. Do you want to take a chance on guessing the rest?
Sure.
Okay, because I have a feeling that the answer to my question, or the answer to my little tidbit here, is going to come out sooner than you think.
Okay, so we used McKinnon and Nichushkin. I'm sorry, Lehkonen.
Kadri and Lehkonen.
Kadri and Lehkonen. Nichushkin.
Okay, yep.
McKinnon had 1 at one point, right?
No, he didn't.
Did he not?
Nathan McKinnon had 13 goals to lead his team in the playoffs, and none of them were game winners. None.
Who scored the game winner in Game 6? Was that?
Which Game 6? The
Cup Game
final?
6.
Lehkonen.
Oh, yeah. McKinnon scored the first goal. That was it. Okay.
But you also had, Kadri scored 1. In the previous, Burakovsky scored the Game 1 overtime winner.
Makar scored 1?
Makar did have a game winner in the list. I think Makar had 2 actually somewhere because Makar scored in overtime against Nashville.
Did Devon Taves have 1?
No, I don't believe so. Devon Taves. Okay, so Devon Taves had. I'll go back and pull this up really quick because Devon Taves had 5 goals in the playoffs. None of them were game winners.
I know Bowen Byron didn't have 1.
No, but I don't think he scored a goal actually. To be honest,
I know that's why I know he didn't have 1.
He did have 4 points though, so I do give him credit for that.
Yeah, no, he played well. He had he had tough matchups.
You know what? The stuff that always impresses me more about guys like that is never the offensive production. It's how good and how good he was at such a young age. Defensively.
Did Logan O'Connor score a game winner?
Let me see. No, because he only had 1 also.
I thought he scored 1 in the second round.
Okay, let me make this easy for you because I'm going to wipe out 3 names who did not score a game winner but scored in the playoffs because they only had 1 goal each. So Eric Johnson had 1 goal, Logan O'Connor had 1 goal, and Sam Girard had 1 goal, and they were not the game winner.
Wow.
Okay, so now we're getting into the territory. By the way, the other game winner in the 7-0 game.
The 1-0 goal.
Yeah. Hang on a minute. I actually have to go back and make sure.
Was it Landeskog?
Landeskog for that one, yes, I believe it was. Okay. Or no, wait, was that Landeskog or Nichushkin? It might have been Nichushkin for that one.
I thought it was Landeskog, but okay, I believe
you.
it.
I thought Landeskog scored the first goal of. Maybe it was. I'm trying to remember.
No, Nichushkin scored the first goal of the 7-0 game. You're right.
Okay. Somewhere in there, Andrew Cogliano scored a game winner. Oh, they had a 7-3 win against. Maybe it was against Edmonton, actually. Yeah. Or no, sorry. Cogliano scored the game winner in the 8-6 game. Sorry, that's what.
Okay,
he
that
had
makes sense.
7. It made it 7-3, I think, and Edmonton got it back to 1 before it was over. Josh Manson had an overtime game winner at one point. Darren Helm had the game winner against St. Louis that moved them on in the series.
Yep.
I already mentioned
JT Compher already.
No, but Compher scored the game winner against St. Louis or against Edmonton. Yes, that was game 3, I believe.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It was game 3.
Okay. We mentioned Kadri. We mentioned Lehkonen, Makar, Nichushkin, Landeskog, McKinnon did not. And there's one more player in the middle who did not have a game-winning goal the entire playoffs. His name is Mikko Rantanen. If you can believe that 2 guys like that, Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, did not score a game-winning goal in the 16 wins in the playoffs.
Wild.
I know. It does not make any sense at all.
By the way, Nathan McKinnon's one of those guys I physically watched the weight lift from his shoulders.
Okay. Remember how a couple way back in the beginning we weren't on this topic yet, and we said we were gonna talk a lot about Cale Makar, and that's fine. Yeah. We did. the guy who I still get up to watch when I hear Colorado Avalanche is Nate.
That's fair.
I think Nate is just so much fun to watch. He has, and Makar has it too, kind of, but McKinnon has, when you see him coming through the neutral zone, he's got another gear that he just hits at random right there. Like, it's almost like you see the guy, like somebody up in the press box has the PlayStation controller that's hitting the turbo button at that moment. Like,
and
yeah,
the problem,
do that now.
The problem is he's built like a Mack truck.
He is. Yeah, you see the size of his shoulders.
Like, they call him Mac because his name is McKinnon, but it also is a Mack truck. And if he puts his shoulder down and pushes across the blue line, are you stepping up on him?
No. Good luck.
Okay.
I mean,
hello.
You can only hope to get him to the outside, I guess. But
your best case scenario is mutually assured destruction.
Right. Now here's the thing about. By the way, they just pump out champions in Cole Harbor, don't they?
Whew.
You know,
it's a very small town.
There's something in the water up there with those two.
Right, the very very small town, but we're talking 2 of the top 10 hockey players in this generation, 2 of the top 5 hockey players in this generation.
Well, you know what, McKinnon. We all said. Remember back before the conference final, because we all said we want to see McKinnon in. Like, we want to see McKinnon and McDavid in a conference final.
Right. And we all said that McKinnon might have gotten over the hump with that finally winning in that second round.
But we all wanted we knew somebody was going to get to the final, and we're like, oh, whoever it is,
it's going to be great.
We're excited to see it because it's going to be about time. It's awesome.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if Colorado or if Edmonton had gotten through, and then instead of the 2 best teams, we had the best player versus the best team. That would have been an interesting dynamic.
You know what's funny though? I don't know if they would have been able to do what Colorado did. Colorado gave you total team, top to bottom, in those. I mean,
I'll tell you this.
Yeah,
Colorado has a better defensive core.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't think Mike Smith holds up as well as Darcy Kemper did.
Sure. Well, and here's the thing about it. Like, forget who your goaltender is for a second in that situation. As a team, you went to the third period up by a goal, 20 minutes away from a Stanley Cup, and you gave up 5 shots in the third period.
Yep.
That's it.
You shut the door.
And you gave up none for the first 10.
Yep.
Like, it was incredibly impressive.
Man, ESPN really did have that stat up the whole period, didn't they?
I think they were just reminding people, like, look at this. You know, this is
domination.
Well, because you know what? It's historic. There's an element of it that's historic because you dethroned that team.
And it really did look like they've played 100 games a season for the last 3 seasons.
Kind of. I mean,
they ran out of gas between the injuries and the gas tanks of those that were surviving. They just didn't have it.
Yeah, they didn't have a normal 3-year run because let's face it, everybody got a 4.5-5 month break between March and late July when you went into the bubble.
Sure,
but then you had 2 months of nothing but go hard for the 2 months. So yes, it's demanding, but you did come in refreshed for a 2-month sprint to the finish, not here's 6 months grind and then, oh, by the way, now the marathon continues with 2 more months of this. It even kind of applied like last season. It's not the same. It was a lot of action in 5 months, 4.5, 5 months, but it is only 56 games, not the 82. So when you add up the total number of games played from, say, when they came back in August to
but you're also thinking about 30 playoff games each run.
Oh, yeah, I am. I'm saying I'm taking away the regular season because they got an off season's length in between the start of the playoffs.
But it was already a shortened off season, and theirs was shorter than anybody else's.
Oh, going into the next year, sure. I'm talking
all 3 years.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. And well, this is why this is important because now you're going to get back on that normal schedule next year, and you're not quite getting the same amount of time as everybody else does, but you're going to get some time to rest here. And you know what? You know what else you don't have to do either? You don't have to do all the parade. Like, as much as you would love the parade, don't get me wrong, of course you would. Everybody wants to have the parade.
It's 2 weeks of partying and drinking. And,
right.
There's a lot.
And there's not a lot of recovery. Like, they're going to go home and they're going to take a break, and it's good for them.
Are you willing to put the D word on it? Are the Tampa Bay Lightning, this iteration of them, are they a dynasty?
They're pretty darn close. I mean, I'd love to see if they can get a third somewhere in the next 2 years to do it.
Okay.
Because
3 and 5 is enough for you?
Well, you know why? Because to me, you know what? I would say Chicago is kind of a dynasty. The same thing. They had 3 and 6.
3 and 6, yeah.
but you always knew they were there.
I think that falls short of dynasty because to me, I feel like a dynasty has to have a repeat in there somewhere.
Okay, that's fair.
Like at some point, you need to be dominant enough that for a full calendar year, you were on top, people chased you, and you still won.
Okay, so let me ask it to you this way.
Okay.
Would you consider Chicago a dynasty if they didn't have the repeat like they do?
If they win like 10, 13, 14 or 10, 14, 15 or something like that?
No. I'm saying they're not going to repeat, so they'll still win 10, 13, 15.
Okay.
But let's say somehow or other in the mix somewhere in there, whether it be 11, 12, or 14.
We throw another one in there?
No, they went to the Cup Final.
Another final?
Because that's what's kind of making me lean it for Tampa, because 3 finals in a row is pretty damn impressive.
If it's 14, I think I count it, because then you win, go to the final, win again.
Okay, that's fair. But see what I'm saying. So
I think you need 3 final appearances in a row to qualify as a dynasty at minimum.
Okay.
With at least 2 wins.
And here's the thing. Okay, so that's why I'm saying I think then Tampa kind of is one, because they've got.
I think they have to be.
They've won back-to-back. They've gotten to 3 finals in a row.
Yep.
They, the year before, the only reason that they didn't was, craziness happened in the
theoretically,
playoffs.
yeah.
Craziness happened in the playoffs, but they were the best team in the regular season to near record proportions.
Right.
And then, before that, they're coming 1 win short of the Cup Final, and they did make a Cup Final in 15 with a lot of the same core and and the same coach and all that type of stuff. Like, there's a lot of it to me that is starting to, I think that's what makes me lean more towards it for Tampa, because I can't argue with 6 conference finals in 8 years. I just can't argue with that. Like, you're one of the Final 4 teams so regularly.
Who do you think is more likely to win the Cup next year? And I'm going to name a couple of teams, and I'm going to put them against the field. I'm going to make it easy for you. So does one of Colorado, Tampa, Toronto, Florida win the Cup next year? Or is it the rest of the field?
I have a little bit of... Okay, so I'm going to break down the 4 that you gave first.
Sure.
Because I'm not going to go crazy with the field, because the field includes teams that we know don't have a shot.
Yeah. I think this is a nice even toss-up.
I know. You know what?
It's hard to bet against Tampa and Colorado, quite frankly.
It is hard to bet against Tampa and Colorado. I'm a little unsure. I'm a little unsure of Florida.
Is anybody surprised if we see a Detroit-Pittsburgh situation and we see both these teams here next year?
Probably not.
Nobody.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think of any other teams that I would consider and again, it's way too early to do this because we have to see what.
I know it is
off-season, but let's put it this way. It's funny you bring up Toronto, because I saw something earlier today that Toronto is are apparently the early betting darling for this, for futures bets next year. That they're apparently
finally their time to get over the hump,
and I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but we'll see.
I think the pressure clock's starting to get to them. Austin Matthews doesn't have
too
much time left.
Well, in that case,
he's going to need a new deal soon.
Well, guess what? In that case, then maybe not for a deal type of thing, but
he's got 2 years left, and he's walking right to UFA.
Well, listen, if
and the cap ain't going up this year; it's going up $1 million.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm thinking Edmonton's got to fall into that boat a little bit too, because the longer you have a McDavid, the more that every year that goes by, it becomes unacceptable that you're not there.
I'm stunned he hasn't asked for a trade out already. And I think if they didn't make the run they made this year, I think this could have easily been it.
Confidence,
now he's back, especially if they bring Evander Kane back. But that's a whole other situation that we're not going to have time to cover on this show.
They need to do more than that anyway, so forget that. But I kind of Florida's a tough one to get a read on right now, because they're going to have to do a lot. There's a lot of construction that needs to be done with that. First of all, in terms of getting a team that you think can kind of compete with, because they still kind of can't compete with Tampa. When it comes to crunch time, they can't compete with Tampa. Number one,
they currently have some salary cap problems,
and that's the other thing. You've got to work around. Then you got to do cap gymnastics. Yep. Do you know who I would like? I almost wonder if I can talk you into swapping out Florida with the Rangers, then I might really lean towards that group of 4.
I just don't want to talk about the Rangers possibly winning a cup
next year. I know, but they're there, and you know they're going to
be
there. That's the thing.
I know, and Adam Fox is really good, and Artemi Panarin's really
You
good,
think-
and Mika Zibanejad's really good,
forget
and
that.
Igor
You-
Shesterkin is friggin' incredible.
No, but forget all of that. You think that Colorado's defensive core is young and good?
I know.
The Rangers have 4 regular defensemen under the age of of the age of 23 or under.
Yep.
That's absurd. But beside the point with that, like,
Can we file a formal complaint to go to like the Central Division? I'll play Kirill Kaprizov. He's fun.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, there are other teams in the field that I don't want to just gloss over. Like,
Thank God the Islanders are going to fall apart.
I mean, Carolina's got to be a team that's going to start to work their way. They got to start working their way more into that conversation at some point. Maybe they need a little bit more. Like, I hate to. I think it's weird that I'm going to say it, but maybe they need a little bit more skill.
They're starting to get into that. Can they get over the hump conversation?
Well, because I think that that's why I said it's crazy to say that I think they might need more skill, but I don't think you can lean on Svechnikov Aho all the time. You need somebody else who buries it. But beside the point.
I'm going to get a prediction from you here, and then we're going to go hit the Hall of Fame, and then we're going to get out of here.
The Hall of Fame thing is more of a discussion I want to have than who's going in. But
right now, June 28th, 2022, a take that is sure to age poorly. Kevin Durso, who wins the 2023 Stanley Cup?
Oh, man alive. I mean, right now, right now I would probably. I mean, I'm not sure how. Like, I'm trying to figure out how Colorado is going to run it back as much as they can, because they're going to try to. The 2 guys that I have trouble seeing with Colorado beyond this year specifically, and I'm sure there's more that have their contracts up that we can factor into that, but Kadri's contract is obviously up, and Manson's a guy who I don't know if he's going to stick. Like, Manson could just go walking straight back home to Anaheim again.
That's fair.
Take the cup ring that you won in Colorado. Had a great time, but my home, like, I did this for the, like, doing it for, like, to win, and then going back to a place where he feels settled and comfortable. If they can keep Manson, then I think that they're, like, if they can keep Manson, I don't even know who's going to be the goaltender next year at this point. That's how crazy, and I know it sounds crazy.
Fair.
I think that they have some questions to answer at that position a little bit, but they've proven you can win without the elite goaltender because the defense is elite. Like, at the end of the day, Makar and Taves are not going anywhere at the top. Byram's going to be there. Manson, maybe. We'll see. And then you still go behind them, and you get...
Gerard comes back next year.
Gerard comes back, probably plays with Byram, and then you got Eric Johnson on there. And, if Manson...
And then whoever's there. Jack Johnson...
You can say Jack Johnson, or Jack Johnson can go back to be in the 7th, and you can pick any, pick the low-risk, high-reward guy who probably fits into the system well enough because the system, runs on all cylinders.
I'm going to hit you with a spicy one.
Okay. Who are you picking?
At some point, maybe it's the offseason, maybe it's the trade deadline.
Okay.
This team trades for John Gibson.
Colorado does?
No. The team I'm going to predict trades for John Gibson. And then rides him like a pony to the Stanley Cup Final.
Okay, well, then obviously it's not Anaheim because Anaheim's trading John Gibson, apparently.
And that's going to be the Edmonton Oilers.
Wow. Okay.
Tell me you don't love it.
Listen, I'm all for Connor McDavid playing meaningful playoff games, and Leon Draisaitl for that matter, and better yet, I'm all for Connor McDavid and a healthy Leon Draisaitl, or mostly healthy Leon Draisaitl, playing in the playoffs that late.
Man, because he was playing hurt. Whew.
Well, it makes the 30 some odd points all the more spectacular.
It's spectacular. You're right.
He did it on one foot. Like, come on. I mean, by the end of the year, there were a lot of guys who were playing on stuff. I mean, I don't know if you caught the list. Like, the Lightning list came out today, and I think there was some. I know for Colorado they had a couple of them because Kadri shouldn't have been back for 6 weeks. He came back in 2.
Like half these guys, it should have just said NA parentheses.
Cagliano's middle finger was broken, unlike a former Flyers goaltender.
Unlike Alex Lyons, suspended for 2 games. What a joke!
I just wanted to get that in there. That's all. Who was the other one I saw for Colorado? Oh, the picture that went around of Nichushkin's foot.
Oh my God.
Nichushkin's foot is done for, but who cares? He won a Stanley Cup. And,
making a UFC reference here. His foot was a balloon. That's a Conor McGregor reference.
There you go. All right, are we on to this Hall of Fame thing really quick, and then we're out of here? By the way,
yeah. So is Colorado officially your pick for next year?
Today, yes.
Okay.
But I am curious about the offseason with them.
Like I said, takes that are short of age poorly. No problem.
But for now, they are. I would love to see what happens with the Kadri thing and what happens with some of the other players, but we'll see what happens. And
all right.
And as we wrap that, by the way, because I think we want to make sure we say it, congratulations to the Colorado Avalanche. Because,
absolutely. Congratulations. Third Stanley Cup in franchise history, first in 21 years.
If I remember correctly, by the way, I believe that I came on here after the first round of the playoffs and said it feels like remember how last year it's Tampa's time, or 2 years ago it was. I said I feel like it's Colorado's time.
I'm willing to give you that. That's fair.
I think it just was a feeling. They're that good of a team, and I was really happy to see them win actually, because they've got a lot of guys that I think are easy to root for. Notably the McKinnons, Landeskog it was great to see him lift the cup first. By the way,
would you say that some of these guys are future Hall of Famers?
It's still early for some of them, but there's let's put it this way. There's one guy who is very well.
Is Nathan McKinnon a future Hall of Famer?
Give me a minute, actually, because I want to see what his career stats are. Because I know. Let's put it this way. It feels like he knew. I want to say this. Nathan McKinnon knew about his legacy from before this season, because the line last year at the press conference when they lost. Been in the league 9 years and haven't won anything kind of thing.
Right.
Like, he knew that the career is marred without the cup.
Right, and now he has it.
He's got it. I mean,
I think that's enough to put him in, quite frankly, just with the individual success he's had.
You're looking at jeez. See, I didn't even, I keep forgetting how young he still is, too. You're looking at a guy who's going to be 27 in September.
Yep.
Who's played 638 games, no signs of slowing down. He'll eclipse 1,000 easy.
He's about a year older than Braden Point, a guy we talked about earlier.
Yeah, roughly. And
think about that.
638 games, 648 points, 242 goals. I mean, if the guy first of all, he's going to eclipse the 1,000-point mark at this rate, because why wouldn't he?
Right.
And if he gets to 502, then yeah, I think he got a case. And naturally, I think that a certain defenseman is well on his way, don't you think?
Yeah.
You're the only player in the NHL history to win the Hobey Baker, Calder, Norris, Conn Smythe, and Stanley Cup.
And I want to pump the brakes a little bit because the kid's 23 and only has one full 82-game season.
Oh, by the way, the only other defensemen who were that age or younger that won the Conn Smythe
fair.
Were only Serge Savard and, oh, by the way, what's that other dude's name? Bobby Orr.
That's pretty good. Well, listen. Nathan McKinnon may or may not be a future Hall of Famer, but we do have some names that definitely are future Hall of Famers, and we know that because they have been announced.
Yeah, this was cool.
So we have the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2022, and it includes Roberto Luongo, Daniel Alfredsson, Riikka Salonen, Herb Carnegie, and both Sedin brothers, Henrik and Daniel, obviously going in as a duo, just like they were drafted, just like they played their whole careers, just like they retired.
Right. I mean, now that shouldn't, that really...
And that surprises zero people.
Right. And now, I've seen some people on here who are going, what are they getting in for kind of thing?
What jerk-off Hall of Fame writer votes for Daniel but not Henrik, or vice versa?
Well, here's the thing. It's not... Okay, so it's not done like baseball, so it's done like there's only a selection committee.
Oh, it's a selection committee? Okay, but still, what selection committee member is picking one and not the other? Let's be honest. Let's look at hockey honestly through an honest lens.
Yeah, do you know why? Because
they were joined at the hip their entire career, and I'm not convinced they didn't change jerseys at least once. Don't tell me they didn't pull the Parent Trap.
That's not even it. You know why? Because of the fact that at the end, you're sitting here talking about a selection committee. Yeah, you know what? We have this conversation all the time in baseball, because baseball, it is writers. It's the people who cover the sport that then make the decision on whether you were a Hall of Fame player or not. You know who's making the phone calls to the players who make the Hockey Hall of Fame? Two Hockey Hall of Famers, Lanny McDonald and Mike Gartner, are making the phone calls to tell you, hey, among the people who are on this committee, us included, by the way, we're telling you you're in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. Welcome to the Brotherhood. It's very much done like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
listen, Kevin Love is in the
yeah, I know.
the Hockey Hall of Fame. Come on. Let's be honest.
I mean, and this is why I want to have this discussion, because we are going to run down the list of names that did make it, but there's names that haven't made it yet that I feel like we need to mention.
Are you going to mention Alexander McGillney?
Absolutely. I tweeted his name first.
Everybody has.
But okay, so let's start with this because we're going through the class kind of and all stuff. Like, by the way, to go through the whole thing here, Rika Salonen, who's the female player who's going in, is pretty much, if you can pick, if you're talking about the top players in the U.S. or Canada at the women's hockey level, this is Finland's, top player all time. Like
absolutely.
This is Finland's all timer. So
this is Finland's Wayne Gretzky. This is right.
for women's hockey, absolutely.
Yes. She's their Marie-Philippe Poulin.
Oh, for sure, and and everybody else who came before her too. That like you can throw in there. Like there's tons. Obviously, like that. There's been a big contingent of that in like I'm trying to remember what year that really. I think it was either 2010 or 2011 was when they really started to bring female players into the mix, and now there's pretty much one annually at least. Right. Sometimes there's two, and which is great to see. Honestly, they need to be recognized more. To be honest, because I like one of the things I know is brought up is everybody focuses on the Olympics between all of them. Whatever country wins, it's usually we get to expect usually the U.S. Canada gold medal game in women's hockey. But, like they do more outside of the Olympics, obviously, and it never really gets talked about. So
right, sure.
And then the Herb Carnegie story is like he's no longer here. Obviously, he's passed away a few years ago. I think about a decade ago. But it's a pretty remarkable story because he's an African American general manager type who built who had to just a lot of obstacles. It's a lot of people have written about it. I can't really remember exactly who has, but there's a lot of stories out there about it since this happened.
Sure.
And it was he's incredibly deserving as well.
Yeah.
And then you get the four players that we all know from the NHL, and we like the Sedin twins. It just felt obvious. Like,
sure,
come on, like.
Their international success dictated,
and it's too natural for them to go in together. Like you couldn't split them up or do anything like that.
No, of course not.
Luongo is 4th all time in wins.
Yeah, he was not getting in.
Like, I'm sorry, if you're behind, we know you're behind two guys who are already in there, and then one who's definitely going to be there when his career is over because he's still playing. So you're behind.
Was Bobby Lou in net in 2010 for Canada?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. You win a gold medal for Canada, you're going in the Hall of Fame.
And that's why you're looking at 4 players who were making the Hall of Fame this year as NHL players who never won a cup. There's no cups between them.
That's insane.
But it doesn't matter because their achievements and what they've done for their at the NHL level, what they've done internationally, it all stands out. So Luongo is 4th all time in wins. He's behind Waugh, Brodeur, and Fleury.
I wonder how
Fleury's going to make it eventually.
I wonder how many comparisons will be made between Danny Alfredson and Claude Giroux.
We'll see about that, but listen, for me...
It could end up there.
I hear you. For me, specifically, though, as I looked at it's about time for Daniel Alfredson, though.
Yeah.
He belongs. And you know what? I think one of the things that matters, at least to me that matters, I think, is if you're the guy who defines an entire franchise, like, quite literally, like... and I'm not talking about, hey, Claude Giroux with the Flyers. Like, this is a guy who pretty much from the time that they came, but when the Ottawa Senators were back from, and all that, it was him. Back
with that original 2D logo.
Yeah, which I'm so glad they went back to.
Oh, yeah. It's so sweet.
It was him. It's always been him. He was an outstanding player, and he's deserving of this. No question about it. Now, I lumped in, okay. So I said you hit the nail on the head when I said when's it going to be time for Alexander McGillivray? And I had another name that I mentioned specifically.
Okay.
And then I could elaborate on more later as a conversation kind of struck up, but because this was on Twitter, obviously. I feel like it's an obvious name. You should know where I'm going with it because you love this guy.
Okay.
Rod Brind'Amour.
Yeah.
When's it time for Rod?
There wasn't enough room. You know what? Honestly, I heard they were worried about security at the venue because Rod was bringing those guns in. Like, come on now, Rod the Bod.
Didn't call him Rod the Bod for nothing, I guess.
That's a licensed weapon right there.
So now here's the thing: there are among the others, and I agree with these names as well because I had somebody send these over too, and this is fair because first of all, Keith Tkachuk, anyone?
Yeah.
How about Jeremy Roenick?
To me, it just gets funnier every year Jeremy Roenick doesn't get in at this point, because it's funny. He better be careful, or he's going to end up Kurt Schilling himself.
Well, yeah, it could eventually lead to that, but yeah,
And like, I'm not saying he deserves that. I'm not passing judgment on Jeremy Roenick one way or the other. But if he's not careful, he's not. JR, you might have to kiss some booty here. If you want that Hall of Fame ring, you might want to. You might want to pucker up a little.
Okay, so this is the thing. For the life of me, I cannot figure out why McGillney's not in, or Kachuk's not in, or Brindamore's not in. Like, yeah, those are like, you sit there and you go, what more do they have to do? They already had great playing careers. The numbers speak for themselves. There's not like, at least with Roenick, I can understand if there's some like, doubts because of his character a little bit, or his like when he played, he was a character and he was funny and it was great for the game.
Right. Well,
and then it got a little controversial, and he lost a TV gig and all that stuff. So you know what I mean? Like,
by the way, you mentioned McGillney. There is an argument that he should be in the building category, like just as the first guy to he's the first guy to defect over from Soviet Russia. Like at the time, quite dangerous. Like we've all heard the story of how Evgeny Malkin got to the U.S. McGillney was 20 years earlier and at the height of the Cold War.
Right.
Like, hello.
I want to bring up some names here really quick, because there are names that are not in these are names that are not in the Hall of Fame, and some of them I'm going to skip, because what I'm looking at is that, okay, so again, not to make a baseball reference with this, but
yeah.
But what's the target in baseball? If you're a 500 home run guy, which is like the 500 goals, or if you're 3,000 hits, which is probably like 1,000 points.
Right.
Like you get to certain clubs that are pretty exclusive. Like I'm looking at
1,500 games.
I'm looking at the points totals right now, like the all-time points leaders in the NHL. There's only 93 people who have ever reached 1,000 points. So that's an exclusive enough class as it is, right? So shouldn't everybody who's in that group theoretically be in?
I'm
theoretically
willing to hear arguments against people, but yes, generally speaking, I would agree that if you make that list, you should probably be in.
Because I'm going to read names that are not in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
From the highest on the list I'll go down to the lowest, because the lowest one is probably one we're going to talk about more. But outside of active players, the top 33 are in the Hall of Fame. The only 3 that are not would be Joe Thornton, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby. Pretty safe to say I think all of them are going to make it when their time comes. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but Crosby's more likely to get the waiting period waived than not get in on the first ballot.
I hear you. That's probably true, actually.
Right.
Okay, so number 34 on the points list is not in the Hall of Fame. That would be Pierre Turgeon.
Okay.
Who, by the way, had 1,327 points.
Probably should be there. Let's just be honest.
Well, considering the fact that now these are Hall of Famers, so these are the names right after him. Gilbert Perreault, Jerome McGinley, Alex Delvecchio, Al McInnes, Jean Rattel, Peter Stastny, Phil Housley. Those are like the next 8 after him.
Yeah, if John Rattel is in, Alexander McGillney should be in.
By the way, as I go, okay, so Phil Housley was 41. Norm Ullman's 42, Jean Beliveau's 43, Larry Murphy's 44, sorry. I'm going to skip 45 because 45 is not in the Hall of Fame. Number 46, by the way, is Bobby Clark.
Nice.
So the player who is at 45 who is not in, and again, we just kind of had a little discussion about him, so it's Jeremy Roenick.
Okay.
Then you start to get into this argument, like, because this is where you can do the arguments for and arguments against thing, probably kind of, because now we're going to go in an order where, okay, I got another couple.
Like, are these guys with fewer than 1,100 points?
Fewer than 1,200, but more than 1,100.
Okay, fair enough.
And this is where this is why I'm getting interesting. We both just sat here and said Rod Brind'Amour, right?
Yeah,
should be in. Okay, Brind'Amour's 51st, 1,184 points. Above him now, he's got some time, so he'll probably make it on merit of how long he was around. But Patrick Marleau is directly above him.
Okay,
he'll probably make it for the all-time game.
Yeah, he's not even eligible to be voted upon at this point.
There is a Hall of Famer right above Marleau in 49th. That's Dino Ciccarelli. And then you've got 2 more names in front of him, below Clark, that are not in the Hall of Fame. That would be Bernie Nichols and Vincent Damphousse. I'm not completely sure, but they both are over 1,200 points.
Right.
it feels like it's hard to argue. You know?
Yeah.
And
at that point, we're talking about sustained excellence over a large number of years. Like, this isn't something like, okay, for example, Bernie Nichols is one of, I think, 7 or 8 players in NHL history with a 70-goal season. That alone is not enough to get in. But the fact that you have 1,200 career points, or pretty close to that, hello,
now,
Hall of Fame.
Here's the interesting part again, because now, skipping the fact that Marlowe's not eligible yet, and you've got 3 others in the top 20, I guess, 2021 that are active, technically. So then the list becomes that are not in the Hall of Fame and are eligible. Turgeon, Roenick, Nichols, Domfus, like I just said. Marlowe's going to be eligible eventually. Brindamore. And then you have this massive run of either they're active or they're in. Because the only 2 actives that are on the list as I go through are Patrick Kane and Evgeny Malkin. And they're not done playing, so the number that they already have is going to get higher. They're going to climb that list more.
Sure.
They're probably going to make it.
And they're going to get in. If you don't think Evgeny Malkin's in on his first ballot.
They're in because they're in for one reason and one reason only, and it's not going to be whatever number of points they finish with. They're in because of the number 3.
Yep.
That's what they're in for. The next guy I come to, and by the way, Henrik Sedin comes up at 67, so he's going in. One of the names, by the way, I passed on that list of run of Hall of Famers is Alfredson, one of the newest, so he's in. How about Theo Fleury? Is Theo Fleury a Hall of Famer? A lot of people believe he should be, to be honest.
For his on-ice contributions, he probably deserves it.
Okay. Now let's put it this way. Theo Fleury in his career, by the way, has 18 more points than Henrik Sedin does.
Okay.
Daniel Sedin comes in at 76th on the points list at 1,041 points. And I just want you to hear some of the names that are not in that, they're not in, but they should, or they could be, and they have more points than Sedin does. Daniel Sedin does. Ray Whitney, Pat Verbeek, Dave Taylor, Andrei Kopitar has more points. He's still active. He might make it with 2 cups.
Yeah, so far you haven't named a name that I'm like, yeah, that guy's better than McGillney, than any of these guys we're talking about. Like all these guys, I'd put them a tier below. Okay.
How about? There's a couple of interesting names as you get down here because he's still listed as active. I think he's kind of close to the end. But is Eric Stahl a Hall of Famer?
Does he have 1 cup?
He does because he won with Carolina. Yes,
1 cup.
It's tough.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
but I wouldn't be surprised if he got in.
How about Doug Weight?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
How about Doug Weight?
Probably should be.
Okay. He's 1 point more than McGillney, by the way.
Okay.
And then 4 points or 3 points below McGillney is Alex Kovalev. Is Alex Kovalev a Hall of Famer to you?
I'll be honest, I don't remember enough about Alex Kovalev off the top of my head to make that call.
I'll pick a player that I know you've actually seen. Is Patrick Elias a Hall of Famer? Man. And he's got cups.
He was a Hall of Fame son of a bitch, I'll tell you that much.
He's got cups. You can't deny it. He's got cups.
So, okay.
There's a lot of people that believe he should be in.
10-year-old me says no.
I like the voice with it, too.
But, reasonably probably.
Okay. And then the last name I'm going to bring up, because this is a local discussion. He's the 93rd player on the list of 93 that have 1,000 points in their hockey career, in their NHL career. Should Brian Propp be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Okay. There you go. Is that a little bit of hometown bias?
You know what? And that is just how we like to do it on this show, and I think that's a good little place to put a bow on it. Just like we wish to congratulations to the the Colorado Avalanche for winning the Stanley Cup, we do also want to wish a sincere congratulations to the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2022. It's a discussion that has come up a couple times recently. One more time, I will read it out. It is Roberto Luongo, Henrik Sedin, Daniel Alfredson, Rika Salonen, and Herb Carnegie from You Would Think. We do congratulate you.
It's come up a little bit in conversation recently. It's still a bucket list trip for me, and probably was obviously put on hold a little bit by everything in the world. I got to do this sometime soon and get up there and
The Hockey Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, and I mean, just spend 2 hours in the Great Hall alone, where the Stanley Cup is with all the other trophies.
If you plan for it next year, you might watch McGillney go in.
Well, I don't know if I'm going up when the class stuff is. I
Come on, that would be fun.
It's in November though. I'm in the middle of covering.
Yeah,
games.
that's fine.
I don't take road trips like that though. Then I gotta go. I'm gonna go in the summer probably when I'm not working.
That's fair.
And can take some real time off. But like seriously, like I probably would spend 2 hours just where all those, the glass plaques are that they put on the wall, and just be taking pictures with a bunch of them.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
There's a ton of other cool stuff that's around inside of the place too. Besides that, but like that to me is the trip, to just look at the names. And
that's definitely
look at the cup and find the names too, because that's the whole point.
That is definitely on the bucket list, and honestly, bucket list hockey trips might be a good little summer show topic, because we are getting towards our summer schedule here.
Funny you should say that, because whenever that conversation comes up and the Hockey Hall of Fame gets mentioned, there's probably about 4 other places I want to try to go when I'm up in Canada. So
absolutely,
yeah, I think we'll talk about that on another show for sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, that seems like a great little summer topic. We'll put that one in the bank. We will be back in a couple of weeks with a post-draft show. We'll see what the Flyers do with that 5th overall pick. It's kind of a matter of who falls to them at this point. So
yeah.
Not really a whole lot to go into there. We'll see if they keep that pick. We'll see if they move that pick. We'll see what happens.
Can I say the one thing that I said before the show then? Because I know I kind of came on when they got the 5th pick and said gut feeling was they'll trade it. I feel like now 95% certain they're going to keep that pick probably.
I don't disagree. I think at this point
now, I'll be honest, I haven't really dove into a whole lot on the prospects yet. I was kind of just wrapped up in the Cup Final and the coaching search a lot. So.
And I really do think there's a chance things just go topsy-turvy here, and we see something wild.
Well,
there's a chance.
Well, and here's the thing, not to try to jump too far ahead here, but when we do the next show, like, I got a lot of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks that people will realize soon enough. I'm not going to share now.
Yep.
But we'll see I'll see what I can put together later with this, like, as it gets closer. I have some stuff I'll work on with the draft, but for now, it was kind of pushed off until the Cup was over. And
when Kevin does produce that stuff, you can see it on his Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Make sure you follow us at YWT Podcast. You can find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com, YouTube. We're all over the place. Make sure to follow Sports Talk Philly at SportsTalkPHL, at Flyer-Delphia. They have Delphias for all the sports, so... All right, we are back in our summer schedule, so we'll be back in a week and a half for 2 weeks or so, depending on when this comes out. And until then, we'll see you. And happy 4th of July.